I am delighted to be here this morning with Scottie Mayfield. Scottie, I've known you, of course, I think most of your life, and it's just a pleasure to get to interview you because you've had such an interesting life, and your family history and legacy in this community is just something that's, I don't know of anyone else that can match that. But the Mayfield name is just synonymous with quality dairy products, and it's known throughout the South for that. I was in Marco Island not long ago and walking by the freezer chest, and there was Mayfield's ice cream.
That's hard to believe.
All the way down in the lower end of Florida. So you all have expanded that company. It's just got a fascinating story to me.
Right.
And I wanted to start out talking a little bit about your grandmother in the early days.
Well, I mean, that's the easiest place to start because she was kind of the beginning. The Mayfield, two brothers evidently moved from South Carolina to East Tennessee in 1820. So that's when this area was being established, as you think about the 200th anniversary of McMinn County and the 200th anniversary of Athens, Tennessee. Well, it's the 200th anniversary of a Mayfield person farming here in East Tennessee. And in the early years, it was a little bit of everything. My great-grandfather, we have an ad where he had horses and pigs and cows and a little bit of everything. And we count our beginning in 1910. Okay. So in 1910, the Gettys, who had a dairy farm and had jerseys, they liquidated their farm. And so our grandfather bought more cows than he could drink the milk, so that's when it all started. And if you go, we still have a family member does not own it, but the original dairy parlor is still there where they cool the milk, and it's just a concrete trough. There was a water ram in a big spring down by the creek, and it pumped water through that trough, and you could set a pint milk bottle, a quart milk bottle, or a 10-gallon can in that water and cool the milk down. And of course, milk coming out of a cow is 100 degrees, and so you got to get it cooled down. And the spring was only 56 degrees, but still that was the way it started. And so grandmother, I know she gave a little talk to the Kiwanis Club, and I learned a lot from her then. And they evidently her husband, they got married, and he tried all kinds of. He did strawberries, he did a little bit of everything. But his first really successful venture was in 1923. He actually purchased a freezer and started making ice cream. And he made ice cream actually packaged it in metal cans, packed that in salt and ice, and did that for a week before the 4th of July. Dipped ice cream, ran out the 4th of July, came home, and it was the first time that he'd ever really made any money at anything. And he and grandmother stayed up till like 11 o'clock counting the pennies and the nickels and the dimes from that day. And
very successful day, sounds like.
But he built the first, to accommodate that, he built the first pasteurized milk plant between Knoxville and Chattanooga, but it was not as much to pasteurize the milk, even though that was a great advance in technology at the time for Athens, but it was to separate the cream so he could make more ice cream. And so he was doing that, and then all of a sudden he has a cerebral hemorrhage and dies when Tom Mayfield, his oldest, was 11, and Scott Mayfield, my father, was 12. And so they hired a man, Tom Harrison, and at that point in time, our business was primarily ice cream. We did a little bit of local milk delivery, but most of the business was ice cream. And then along comes World War II, and both my uncle and my father both served in the Navy. Tom was a naval aviator, and he actually was stationed in Memphis, and so he could actually ride the train at night, all night Friday night, and be in Athens Saturday morning, spend Saturday morning here, Saturday and Sunday here, and then ride the train back to Memphis Sunday night and be back at his Navy position on Mondays. And, you know, during the war, everything was frozen, and so we continued to sell milk and a little bit of ice cream, but it was hard to get sugar. We could sell milk, but that was about it. Then the war's over. Uncle Tom and my dad come back from the war. They're trying to decide, well, what do we want to do? Well, we've got this business. And it was 80% ice cream. And so Tom goes to the National Dairy Show, the next one they had, where there's all the latest equipment. And he is there to buy and grow our ice cream business. And while he's there, he discovers that every major company, Sealtest, Borden, Carnation, every national company in America was getting ready to build a new ice cream plant. So he comes home and he convinces the family that we should build a new milk plant, even though that was only 20% of our business, and it was a major decision. So lo and behold, they started and they built a new milk plant on our present location, and it was so funny. They wanted to build it where E&E Products is. But that was so far out of town at that point in time, the bank wouldn't loan him the money to do it, which is kind of humorous. But anyway, they built that plant, and so they were absolutely, had the latest technology, and our milk just lasted longer because it was a better quality process all the way through. And then but back in those days, the farmers in East Tennessee were not able to control onions. And so in the springtime, everybody's milk tasted oniony. And so milk consumption would just plummet. And Tom was at a dairy show and saw this new machine that would remove that odor and flavor. And in 1955, we installed that, and every year from the next, 10 years, our business would increase 15 or 20% in every spring, maybe 25 or 30, because our milk was so far superior than anybody else's. And today the farmers control what the cows eat so much that that machine is not necessary, but at that point in time, it was instrumental. And so I think they've always had a real strong commitment to quality. Tom and my dad, but Tom was maybe the bigger innovator, I guess, but we were the first or second or third to do a lot of things in the United States. It's hard for me to remember them all, but after World War II, paper packages came along. Before that, it was just glass. But the grocery stores started having refrigeration. Homes had refrigeration. So we bought and installed a paper packaging machine, which was the first one in the area. And we started selling milk to stores, not just, home delivery. And then in the 70s, we went to, we fought it for a while because we knew that there was a problem with light, but we finally went to a plastic jug. And interestingly enough, when we went to that plastic jug in 1971, our sales just flattened for about 10 years until in 1983, we introduced milk in a yellow jug, an opaque yellow container that protected not only the flavor but the vitamins in milk. And in my opinion, our industry should have that everywhere, but they don't, and that's just part of it. But it gives us an advantage flavor-wise. So that was a huge innovation. Tom helped develop the Zip 2 ice cream package, which they quit making it. And then Rob and I got involved in I think our first big deal was with Nutrish, which was a milk with probiotics in it, which a few years later we changed to Nurture, and we still have today. It's probably one of the more superior products that we have in our milk line because it has the probiotics. And Rob and I were involved in the introduction of the Yellow Jug. That was a major situation. And then a few years after that, Rob and I helped develop we call it a Scround, the new 2-piece package that we have today for ice cream. And so we've always tried to innovate, try to have the best ice cream we could have. I'll never forget, Frank Quillen was our plant guy and purchasing guy, and I was with him, and he was meeting with a nut salesman, pecans, and we tasted the pecans, and we did all these things, and the sales guy left, and I said, Frank, I don't understand. You never asked him what the price was. And he said, well, if they don't taste good, it doesn't matter how much they cost. And I thought that was very interesting. So it's been, a commitment to quality. And one of the greatest things about being focused on quality is it attracts employees that you might not otherwise get. When you're trying to do the best, people like to be a part of that. And we've always had, I think, some of the greatest employees, and still do today. We've had just fabulous employees that it was their place, it was their product, it was their ownership of our products and our service and our relationship with people that I think helped us. So,
Scottie, I remember hearing the story that your grandmother sold cottage cheese out of the back of was it a truck or what?
Well, I mean,
is that a true story?
the story is that she made cottage cheese for some of her friends at home. I can't imagine doing that in this day and time, but she did. And some of her friends said, you need to make this cottage cheese and put it on your route. I mean, the route at that point in time was a home delivery with a horse-drawn cart. And eventually we had trucks, but at first it was a horse-drawn cart and just iced down. And so, yes, she originally made cottage cheese and put it on the route, and it got to be a little bit of a burden. And so when they built the plant in the 2223 downtown, they added the capability of making the cottage cheese at the plant, and so she didn't have. But she originally made that our cottage cheese. So.
Well, I remember hearing that story, and that was one of the earlier products that you all were selling. And
she was a. I think that my parents had superior ethics, if you will. Okay, and I give my grandmother a lot of credit for that. She was one of those people that was not necessarily outspoken, but she was very frank about what she did say and what she thought, and I think she was a very positive influence when it came to doing things right and having the best and those sorts of things. And my dad and uncle both were bought into that 100%. And it's interesting. I was involved in the business and had been involved with advertising a little bit and sales, of course, but we had a Christmas card that our advertising agency developed, and back in those days when we ordered Christmas cards, we ordered a 2-year supply, and we would send out this year's and we would save the other ones, and we would use them about 3 years later. Okay, it was just a way to save money. I mean, Christmas cards are not always that memorable, and they're all pretty much similar. And anyway, the Christmas card came in this particular year, and it just was not good. And so we kind of scrambled around, and we found bits and pieces of past year's Christmas cards, and we were able to send cards out. But as a result of that, I went to my grandmother, who was a real big letter writer, and she was an artist, a watercolor artist, and every letter that she would write, she would usually paint a little bitty flower or plant or something on there. So I went to her and I said, "Grandmother, can you do me a Christmas card?" And, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, a poinsettia or a candle or whatever." And so she kind of grumbled about it, but said, "Well, I'll see," And well, the next day she calls me and she says, "I've got your Christmas card ready." Well, I go and she has made a postage stamp poinsettia.
Oh.
And it was great, but I said, "Grandmother, I apologize, but we can't blow that up and keep the integrity of the colors. I actually need you to paint me something bigger." And she grumbled, and "You didn't tell me that," and whatever. But anyway, long story short, she ended up painting 7 different watercolors, most of them poinsettias, or one flower arrangement in a paper milk carton. I think one was a candle. And so we actually had used her Christmas cards, and it was I think the first one she did was in her late 80s or whatever, maybe. I think that's right. She was an older person, of course, by then, and but she got a lot of satisfaction, I think, out of it. I think the Chattanooga Times even did an newspaper article, and they had a picture of her and my uncle and my dad and the Christmas card. So that was really kind of neat, and people liked them and collected them. And so people still have them and talk about them today. So
I still have a couple of mine, and I really treasure them. But
I just thought of something. I know that when we went to the plastic milk container, my uncle went to Alcoa Aluminum, and our first plastic milk jug had an Alcoa aluminum top. And we've still got a few of them. Of course, it would break apart, and so the bottom part of it isn't there. But that was just the way he was as far as innovating and trying to have a better product or a better package or a better total package for the consumer. He was very consumer focused.
And Scottie, I always thought it was interesting how this was always a family-oriented endeavor. Everything that you all did involved your whole family, it seemed like. I remember Elaine, of course, your sister, being up here one day, and she said, "I have to leave because I've got to go paint a cow."
She and Mother used to paint our big cows.
Yeah, Molly was it? Was
Maggie.
Maggie. Okay, I misremembered the name. But those were huge.
Oh yeah, and Elaine and I, not so much Clarice, but Elaine and I both showed cows, worked and you don't just go show a cow. You've got to practice, and the cow's got to get to know you and everything. And so we had, and I worked on the farm when I was young until I could work at the plant, and then my dad, moved me around to different positions so I could help learn the business. But yeah, we were always involved, and Elaine had Beacon Bass Tulip was her cow, and she was the national grand champion 3 years in a row. I mean, it was a really super cow. So yeah, we were always involved in one way or another, it seems like.
We've got a picture upstairs in the dairy area of Beacon.
Okay.
The cow.
Lindale Beacon Bass is the bull's name, and then there was he did a milestone Lindale Beacon Bass cross between some milestone women, female cows and the Lindale Beacon Bass. It was he had Jersey cows that would produce as much milk as Holsteins. I mean, my dad was a terrific herdsman. That was kind of his hobby. He kind of oversaw the farm, where and that was kind of his hobby. And I think my uncle's hobby was airplanes. And so.
Right, I remember that. Scottie, I think one of the most successful things you all did was the visitor center, wasn't it?
It was. It was very interesting. By the time we actually built the visitor center, we were a part of Dean Foods. We had actually sold the company to Dean Foods, and I'll never forget the first year we presented a capital budget project to them. And of course, they just kind of laughed about it and said no. And then the next year we presented it again, and they approved it. And so we were able to get the support of our new owners and build that in Athens. And then the biggest thing that happened after we became a part of Dean Foods was we had taken ice cream to Atlanta in 1977. And in just 3 years, we were the #1 ice cream in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, it was a very successful entry. And I don't think Atlanta at that point in time they just did not have a great ice cream. They had some good ice cream brands, but they did not have a great ice cream brand. And so it was pretty easy to achieve that level of success. And I felt like that we could do the same thing with milk. And that may be one of the reasons we ended up selling the company, because I don't think Tom agreed with that strategy. So anyway, once we did become a part of Dean Foods, we took milk to Atlanta in 91. That's correct, 91. And by 2001, we had a 20% share of the Atlanta market in milk. So that was, a lot of people don't know about that, but that was a major effort. And then with the merger with Dean Foods, we kind of went on a lull of not supporting our brand, and we're back with our most recent and I think permanent owner now is the Dairy Farmers of America. So the farmers that actually produce the milk are our owners, and they're very interested in our brand. They've helped us improve our packaging look. They're beginning to do a little bit more advertising than we have done in the recent years. So I think the future's bright. I was just with our new milk general manager, Eddie Allen. He had a meeting, and we had all these key people together talking about their little aspect of getting milk and ice cream from beginning to end, and it was just fabulous to hear all these people and all the expertise and the subject matter experts. It was very exciting.
Well, I know it makes you feel good knowing that since this carries your family name, that they are producing quality.
We've probably got the best ice cream in America. There's one other company based in Washington State that has ice cream that when we do blind taste tests, we continually tie with them, but everybody else we tend to edge out. I mean, there's other good ice creams out there, but ours is really excellent.
It is that. Well, didn't it win some awards, national awards?
Well, everybody talks about the Time magazine article back in, it was the Time magazine, the front cover is ice cream. But inside that magazine, I can't remember, it's in the 60s, was the royal wedding with Princess Di, okay? So that's why that magazine sold more than any magazine in a long time. But in that magazine was a very long article about ice cream. And the Time magazine, I guess folks in New York sent out to their various writers across the country and asked them to send something in, and we had there was a Time magazine person in Atlanta that went around. I guess it was in the 70s, if it was in Atlanta. Anyway, this person asked people just to go up to people on the street and ask them about ice cream, and they had, well, the best ice cream in the world is Mayfield. I mean, they had a number of people say that out of nowhere. And so in the first 2 or 3 lines of that article, it says what you need to understand is that Mayfield ice cream is the best ice cream in the world, and then they mentioned Ben & Jerry's as being one of the best ice creams. Mm-hmm. And then we're not mentioning the rest of the whole article.
But that's right.
And so everybody thought it was a national contest, but it was just an opinion of some people that got kind of embellished a little bit. But our ice cream is good. I'll put it up against anybody's. We do.
Oh, absolutely.
We do a number of blind taste tests over the years, and I've done a lot of focus groups over the years, and I can tell you that it's a superior product. The same thing with milk. When I do a blind taste test with milk on the yellow jug and a clear jug, using Mayfield milk in both jugs, the average score on a scale of 1 to 10 for the yellow jug is 7.6 and the clear jug is 4.6. And to get over 8, you got to have sugar in it. So it's got to be chocolate milk or ice cream. So anyway,
well, I love your frozen yogurt.
It's a good product.
One of my favorites.
Rob helped. Rob was kind of at the helm developing that, and I'll never forget when we introduced that. Tom was upset because the strawberry frozen yogurt was better than our ice cream, strawberry ice cream. But strawberry is a really light flavor. And so with the lower fat in the yogurt, it allows that strawberry to come through where the fat in the ice cream kind of masks it a little bit. So it's a superior product. Anyway, it was fun.
I agree. There's not a flavor that I don't like in that frozen yogurt. It's excellent. Scottie, I want to ask you just a couple of personal things here in a minute about your woodworking and all your talent, but your family has left a legacy of philanthropy, throughout this whole area. And I've been impressed with how you and Elaine and Clarice have perpetuated that through your family foundation. And I know what it's meant to our museum. Exhibit-wise, you all have contributed to several of the exhibits we have here. And we have probably one of the most popular programs the museum's ever done is our Heritage School on Saturdays. And I was so concerned after COVID because of getting that back up and running. It was not a problem at all.
Good.
The first couple we might have had 5 or 6 people, and we're back up to our number of 25, 30,
That's
even
good.
more people attending those. And I'm just so grateful for that legacy, because in that Heritage School we are perpetuating the artistry. I think that your family is most of it is a folk art. A lot of it's folk art that we feature, and I think that's something your family is so well known for. Could you tell me a little bit about how you got so interested in woodworking?
Well, first of all, a lot of people don't realize how talented my mother was. I've got 2 watercolors that she did of the old original milk plant that are, it's a watercolor of a brick building.
It's not easy.
It's amazing. And she didn't even sign them, but they're just amazing. And she was a very traditional housewife. When Daddy came home from work, she was there for him. But when he went out of town, she would get all her stuff out. She loved to toll paint. She would take old, pieces of kitchen, not utensils, but pots and pans and things, and toll paint them. Yeah. And she made some copper trays where she would beat them out with a hammer. She was very, very talented. And I think that my sisters, both who are artists, and myself, get that, get some level of talent from her, and I guess from grandmother as well. As far as woodworking, I think that I have the need to use my hands. Okay, I think I just like to do things using my hands, and so my first experience with woodworking was making picture frames out of barn wood. I didn't have very much equipment. I had a little router and a little bitty table saw and a hand miter box, and I made some picture frames out of old barn wood, which was pretty forgiving because if it was not perfect, you could kind of smash it together and it looked like it was a good joint. And then I ventured into some other things, and I just kept being curious about different things, and I've turned some bowls, and I really like to turn up platters to expose the wood. I think wood is very, very, very beautiful, as some parts of it are extremely beautiful, and it's just kind of a God's creation, if you will, and if you can expose that, it looks nice. So I make birdhouses. I guess I've probably made more of these little Christmas trees than anything, but my wife was in the mountains and brought one home that was similar to what I make, but not exactly, made out of some wood from up in the mountains. And I like the best Christmas trees that I make come from are made out of cherry or walnut. The bark seems to stay on there, and they seem to have more of the lichen that looks like snow and what have you. So I've enjoyed doing that. And then I got, made some mushrooms, made some leaves. I've just done different things, and I just like doing. I just like, I've made some furniture. My furniture's very rustic, if you will. It's not really, Jeff Wilkins makes fine furniture. Really fine furniture. I've never achieved that level of success. Some of my things are really nice, but this is not quite that next step up, if you will. More rugged, or if you will, or I think. But anyway, I made our 4-poster king size bed, which was probably the nicest thing I've ever done. I've made some blanket chests, one for each of my children, and one Lisa and I, and with wooden hinges. And so it's just fun to play with wood.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know you contributed several things to our auctions up here. They are always popular items.
It's fun, yeah. Well,
always popular items.
Well, that's just like my mother getting involved in the museum. She and Minty Wilson were, they were two people to reckon with. When they decided they were going to do something, it was going to happen. And so I'll never forget being at Kiwanis, and I knew, because I was living obviously at home with my mother, I knew that this museum business was going on. And the Kiwanis Club was kind of the club in Athens, and if you were going to raise any money, you better go see the businessmen that were a member of the Kiwanis. Back in those days, it was just men. We didn't have ladies at that time. But anyway, my mother goes, and you could almost see a little smugness on the face of some of these men, knowing she was going to ask for money, and they didn't know that she had already been to every widow in McMinn County and had already raised, I think, $400,000. And so when she told them that, it was like, man, I better get on board or I'm going to be left behind. It was really neat. And I think that Tom and Daddy and always were trying to give back to the community where it was appropriate. they ended up with this high school building, and it made sense. We didn't need all these buildings, and so it made sense to let the museum move from the college to this building we're in today. And the parking lot, I don't even know if the church owns the parking lot or the museum owns the parking lot, but we have a parking lot out here.
Yeah.
That we all use, and it
Absolutely.
accommodates everybody very well. And and then we had the property that appeared to be a good location for the library, and we didn't need that property, and so I think we made a donation of that, and then I mean, the foundation is something that my mother really did. You know, when my dad passed away, she didn't need all the money from his estate, and it's not a huge foundation, but it's for Athens, Tennessee, and our commitment to McMinn County is primarily where we try to share the proceeds of that. So it's been almost a gift to our family, to me and to Elaine and to Clarice, to be able to give money to mostly education is our focus, I think.
Right.
I know my mom was, actually Clarice should get credit for getting my mom involved in Dolly Parton Education Foundation. Mom gets all the credit, but it was Clarice that introduced that whole concept to my mother, and then once my mother found out about it, it was all a head full. And that's, I mean, McMinn County has become a great foundation for the state for that, I think, an example. So that's been a good thing. So it's nice to be in a position to be able to give to things.
Scottie, I guess one of the most memorable things I remember about your mother, and it spoke to her dedication on getting this museum up and running here, was when the building was being renovated. This was in 1989, and of course it needed, you know, we just pretty much started from scratch on everything, the floors, even knocked out a few walls and did some things. But I remember one day the contractor was here, workmen were here, and your mother was here, and I knew that something was wrong with her. She wasn't her usual, you know, get up and go and do self, and your dad came out here and got her. And he says, "You don't need to be out here, we're going to the doctor." And he took her to the doctor, and she had a staph infection and wound up, I think, in the hospital, if I remember correctly.
I remember that.
That was, and I was just flabbergasted that at the dedication she had on getting this building redone and making it into this museum it is today. And she was quite as you said, a force to be reckoned with, and I admired her and I respected her and still miss her.
Yeah,
So,
that was kind of a fluke situation. She had gotten a thorn in her, but she ended up getting a staph infection that settled, I think, in or near part of her heart, and they had to have IV antibiotics, and it was touch and go for a while. But and she was a very determined and very committed person on things.
she certainly was. And but Scottie, this has been a fascinating interview. You know, I've loved this museum and been a part of it for 30 some odd years now. But I've learned things here today that I didn't know. About your family, and I knew how dedicated and your mom was to this project, but I've learned so much, and I just appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
I'm glad to be a part.